I don't know why I bought these books. Welcome back to Comics Are Dope. I'm BJ Kicks, and this video, how do we start this? Well, we're knee deep into the 25 days of comics. We're in the home stretch. There's like 5 days until Christmas, and I've been bringing you a video every day in December until Christmas, except once. I still gotta make that one up. But in my last video, I showed you all the books that kind of led to my kind of slow descent into full-on Wednesday Warrior comic fandom. For a long time, I was kind of dipping my toes in, buying a book here and there. And then there was a series that was interesting to me, and so I bought the series. But by the end of the year 2019, going into 2020, I was a full-on comic book nerd. And so I showed you guys all the books that kind of got me to that status. So if you missed that, you can check out that video there and the whole playlist. But there are like 3 years of time between then and now that we haven't really talked about. And over those 3 years, I have been buying still all sorts of single issues and a whole bunch of collected editions in sort of an attempt to just kind of get all the stuff that I missed out on, so to speak. And along the way, there have been a few regrets. Now, I very rarely regret a comic purchase, but when I do, it's glaring. It's like, oh, why did I buy these books? And so today I'm showing you some of the biggest mistakes I have made as a comic collector. Hopefully you don't make them as well. Now, this video is brought to you by Organic Price Books. Some of these books are actually available in other formats through them. So you can go ahead and order at bjkicks.link/OPB. Hit that first link in the description down below and tell them BJ Kicks sent you for a discount. Now, let's get into this list. We're going to start this off with the probably the biggest and most obvious item behind me. And that is this short box. And inside this short box, it's something I purchased from the Ultimate Comics live show and eBay. This came from multiple sources, but this is a full run of Ultimate X-Men. Now, I've never read Ultimate X-Men, but with this purchase specifically, I was watching the Ultimate Comics live show, which is something I did quite often during the pandemic. And my man Tarney gets up there one day and he's like, hey, I got the first 50 issues of Ultimate X-Men. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And he was selling them for like $1 an issue. So I paid $50 and got the first 50 issues of this. By the way, this series ran 100 issues plus a couple annuals, and there's a mini series in there somewhere. But I grabbed this because I was just so excited. Again, I got into X-Men or into comics because of House of X Powers of 10. So I was like, oh, here's a cool X-Men entry point. I'd heard all about Ultimate Spider-Man. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, Ultimate X-Men should be the same thing before the X-Men, right? And maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I wouldn't know because I've never read a single issue of Ultimate X-Men. And the reason I've not read a single issue of the Ultimate X-Men is because I bought 100 of them, all bagged and boarded, and put them in a short box where they have been sitting for at least 3 years. I bought these like 3 years ago. And that's the first big mistake I made. Now, I do have a couple of other books, like full runs in single issues, but I'm kind of lazy. Like, I'm not going to be digging out 100 single issues out of their bags and boards and putting them back when it's time to read. I barely like doing that for the single issues I buy on a weekly basis. And so this was a dumb decision for me for that reason. If I was going to do something like that, love this cover, it should be for a book that had some sort of sentimental value or just wasn't available in a bunch of other formats. Like, for example, when I bought my Milestone collection, or as I pieced it together over the years, the big reason for that was because at the time, DC and Milestone hadn't made the deals where you could like read Milestone stuff digitally, and they weren't reprinting them in compendiums, and there wasn't any Milestone in existence besides the original stuff. And so I thought, and it was true at the time, the only way to read OG Milestone was to collect OG Milestone from back issue bins and so on. So that's a series that's fine to have in single issues, and I'm a big fan, so it's sentimental to me. But this is just a run that, you know, is what it is. I bought it as what it was. Dollar bin fodder. Not to say that its bad stories are unworthy of being read. It's just not something that, like, you know, is super sentimental to me. March On Ultimatum. That's a cool cover. So yeah, there's a lot of cool covers in here. But I mean, let's be real. I could have just waited and bought the Ultimate X-Men Omnibus. There's a volume 1 that's out and a volume 2 coming like in February, and owned all of this and then some extras and stuff. And it would sit on the shelf and I'd never have to go dig into a short box ever again. Similarly, I also bought like a full run of X-Men Adventures, the cartoon adaptation of the comics, or comic adaptation of the cartoon. So that's fun. So that's the first big mistake I made. I'm not a single issue collector. I mean, I collect single issues in that I like reading them month to month, but I'm not somebody who needs to go back and get a full collection of single issues for something or of something for my collection. And that's the mistake I made with this. So there we go. Now, let's get on to some other kind of regrets that I have as a comic collector. And this next one, I gotta tell you, this next one is an omnibus. Now, like I said, the way I see it, right, I'm collecting single issues, and that's how I'm staying current on like what's happening now. And the way I go back and see what happened before used to be specific or strictly omnibus editions, hardcovers. I'd go back and buy trades and stuff. And it's important to note that I started buying omnis during the pandemic, in those times where you'd go to in-stock trades. Organic Price Books wasn't even out yet, but you go to in-stock trades or cheap graphic novels or wherever, and books would sell out in like 3 seconds. It was insane. You'd go to cheap graphic novels on Mondays, or if you were trying to wait for the maximum discount, you'd wait until 2:00 on Tuesdays for in-stock trades to put their stock up, and it was just as bad as buying Jordans. I kid you not. Now, the mistake I made was allowing people to influence my purchasing decisions based on FOMO, the fear of missing out. Now, people come into the Comics Are Dope community on Discord and on Facebook all the time asking, hey, what book should I buy? What's the great story to read? And so on and so forth, right? And honestly, it all depends on your taste. But for my money, the answer is the best books to buy are the ones you're actually going to read. So try out a character, do some research, whatever you need to do, make an informed buying decision, or just don't go for the most expensive format first, which is advice I gave in a different video. So you can check that out. But that's a lesson that I learned the hard way with this book right here. This is the Justice League Dark New 52 Omnibus. Now, something that I talk about a lot on this channel, or I say a lot on this channel, is that I don't read horror books. I try to stay away from books that are too graphic, like sexually, but I also don't deal with like supernatural horror books. Like I don't do ghosts and demons and exorcisms or whatever. I don't do those things in comics. And somehow I'm holding Justice League Dark in my hand, right? And I bought this specifically because people wanted it and I thought it was going to sell out. And I was at a point where I was just buying everything DC that I could afford. Sight unseen. I didn't know much about these characters. My only exposure to them at the point where I bought this had been deceased. And I was like, oh, Constantine looks cool. Who are the rest of these people? It should be fine. It's New 52. Everybody loves New 52, right? New 52 is Marcus's jam. So it's got to be pretty good. And so I bought this omnibus that I did not need to buy, because what is this omnibus full of? Well, dark elements. What does the Dark in Justice League Dark stand for? I don't know. dark magic, dark supernatural tones, dark themes, dark people. That's all that this book is. Not to say that it's anything bad. There's anything bad about people who like it. It's just not what I come to comics for. As Bunkmaster B would say, Justice League Dark is not a Kicks book. And so that's one of the books that I regret buying because I just bought it blind. And then when I opened it, I was like, oh, this isn't something I'm interested in. $120 later or however much I spent on it. So that's crazy. That's crazy. Now, we'll stick with another hardcover collection. This is my partial run of Marvel Star Wars collections. These are the Dark Horse Star Wars Omnibus reprints. And so I've got the Old Republic Volume 1. I've got The Rise of the Sith. I like this just for this Darth Maul cover. And I've got The New Republic. Now, around the time I was getting into comics, the first Star Wars movie came out in the first of the newest trilogy came in 2017. My wife's family are huge Star Wars fans. And so, I kind of became a Star Wars fan by marriage. I started watching the movies or whatever, and I thought they were pretty cool. I've never seen an episode of Clone Wars. I've never watched even trying to get into The Mandalorian and stuff. I've dibbled and dabbled, but for the most part, the main trilogy is my jam, so to speak. I'm okay with the prequel trilogy, but long story short, my exposure to Star Wars is pretty much just the main trilogy. That's what I like. But I was like, oh, they got Star Wars comic books. I should buy those. Not knowing that Dark Horse's Star Wars library is deep, super deep. I have these 3 books that you can see they're still sealed. I have these 3 books, but there's also 3 or 4 that I've missed out on, and there's more coming out. I don't have the Empire Volume 1 or the Empire Volume 2. There's another one called The Rebellion or something like that. I don't have those. And I don't know that I'm going to buy them because I don't need them. These are not officially Star Wars canon. They don't tie into the movies very much. They're just for people that love hanging out a long time ago in a galaxy far away. And my relationship with the Star Wars franchise is almost like someone came up to you and were like, yo, you know how to swim? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, we're going swimming tomorrow. Pack your trunks. And you're like, all right, cool. And then you get there and you go to the dude's house and you're like, okay, cool. Where's the pool? And he's like, oh, no. We're going out on my boat. We're going to jump off in the middle of the ocean. We're going to swim back to my private island. And you're like, well, wait, that's super deep water. I thought you just meant a pool, a swimming pool. And furthermore, I don't even know that I really know how to swim. Mostly my exposure to water is bathtubs, a hot tub. And when I go to the pool, I kind of dip my feet in, but I enjoy the water. That is how it feels for me as a Star Wars fan, seeing this ridiculous amount of material. Now, I do still plan to grab the in-canon Marvel Omnis. So, Star Wars by Jason Aaron and then Kieran Gillen and, I think Greg Pak did some Star Wars. I don't know. There's Darth Vader and Dr. Aphra. There's plenty of stuff that does kind of loosely tie into the movies and go in and out of the main trilogy that I'm excited about. But all of this that I bought sight unseen just because, my family were big Star Wars fans and I thought, oh, I'd be the Star Wars guy with comics too. Nah, bro. I regret buying these. Now, the biggest theme of this video really is the best books to buy are the ones you're going to read. And so these next couple of books I'm going to show you are books that I bought with good intentions, but I'm not reading these books and I probably shouldn't have bought them. So we'll start with the first. Now, I was really excited when I got into comics, and one of the first books that I tried to pre-order was this, Spawn, issue 300. Todd McFarlane's Spawn. I didn't know anything about Spawn. I'd heard the name before, But, you know, I watched a couple of YouTube videos. Everybody's all excited. Oh, it's Todd McFarlane. Oh, it's Todd McFarlane. And they had this really cool Spider-Man homage variant, which I have in my hand. And I really, really wanted this cover of Spawn. And it's like, oh, now this issue is like the culmination of like a sort of war between heaven and hell and stuff. It's told in like 3 or 4 different short stories. Greg Capullo's in it. Todd McFarlane's in it. Carlo Barberi's in it. There's a bunch of people who contributed to this book. And I found it to be incredibly dense and just like, yo, what is going on? Jason Shawn Alexander in this book as well. But I bought it and I was like, oh, put me down for Spawn. And I proceeded to buy Spawn for the next 32 issues. And in addition to those 32 issues, they kind of expanded to the Spawn's universe and had a bunch of other titles. And I ended up subscribing to another Spawn title, Gunslinger Spawn. And we're all the way up to issue 26. And I still have not stopped buying Gunslinger Spawn. Every time I'm like, oh, I'm not going to buy this issue. It has a great cover. And so I buy it. And the reason this book and this book has stayed on my pull list for so long is, oh, it's only $2.99. They got cardstock covers. It's cheap. Yeah, it's cheap, but I mean, $2.99 a month for like the rest of your life, that adds up, you know, especially if you're doing it more than once. So there you go. Books that I know that I'm not reading. Well, Gunslinger is actually pretty enjoyable. I like Gunslinger Spawn. The mainline Spawn book, though, not my jam. And it took me 32 issues to decide that it wasn't for me. So that's a regret that I have. Now, another regret is kind of not a regret, but it kind of is. I got to be honest with myself. Again, because we're talking about books that, you know, the best book to buy is the one you know you're going to read. Now, this issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I showed off in my last video. It was the beginning of my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles run. And I've been picking up Ninja Turtles ever since. My most recent issue is issue 145. So this is 45 issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that are in my collection, with the 46th being in my pull box at my LCS right now. And the last issue I really remember reading, I've dipped in and out, but the last one I really remember was issue 113, which was, I believe, their silent issue that they did around Christmas. And I might have even gotten that number wrong, but it was a good enough issue. But all in all, I hadn't been crazy excited about the direction that TMNT had been going. It's had its exciting moments, like the Teenage Mutant Punk Frogs or whatever it was. I went and dipped in for those issues, and I read them and I collected them all. But I hadn't been reading Ninja Turtles over the last 4 years, as much as my collection would imply. Now, here we are, 3 issues away from a milestone issue where Sophie Campbell's going to jump off the title. And am I still going to keep buying Ninja Turtles? Probably, because since I started collecting these, I bought all the hardcovers to catch me up from issue 1 all the way up to issue 100. And it's an unbroken run of Ninja Turtles, and I'm a completist to a fault. But this is one of the books, it's a light regret, but I probably should have just jumped off this title the first time I was dissatisfied with it, which was, I want to say like issue 109. I was like, what is happening right now? Like, the Turtles are in a rock band. Like, what's going on? So anyway, Ninja Turtles. Another book in a very similar vein. You hear me talk about it on the pull list every 2 weeks. This is The Walking Dead Deluxe, issue number 1. Now, when this was announced, I was like pretty excited. Oh, snap. They're reprinting The Walking Dead in color. You can't walk into a comic shop or into an online circle without hearing about The Walking Dead. Oh, Kirkman did The Walking Dead, and The Walking Dead is this great TV show, and blah, blah, blah. It's zombies, and people love it. And it's the most amazing thing ever. It's the phenomenon sweeping a nation. And all those things, I suppose, are true. But from this issue of The Walking Dead Deluxe, which is issue number 1, all the way up to the most recent issue in my hand, which is issue 77, I've not read a single one. Now, my initial goal with this was they were like, oh, this is the only way you're going to be able to get this in color. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll just take these and custom bind them into a hardcover. This is going to be like 4 or 5 hardcover volumes. That's going to be a super expensive project. And I'm paying $3.99 each for each issue. And I've been doing so twice a month for the last 3.5 years or so. And I'm like, dang, I probably shouldn't have, but oh well, here we are. Walking Dead Deluxe. I also have not stopped my subscription to it because why would I complete half a run? So worst case scenario, this will sit in short boxes. And I found out way after the fact that you actually can read this digitally. You can buy it on Comixology in the full colors. I did not know that. But hey, spilled milk, right? Now, the last book on my biggest regrets list. You probably see it in the background, but it's got to be this. Now, these are some expensive covers, but what these represent is my full collection of Batman 3 Jokers covers. I bought every cover for every issue, and then I bought every incentive cover for every issue. So each issue had at least 3 covers. In some cases, there were like up to 7 covers. And they're all done by Jason Fabok. They're all amazing. They all feature different Jokers, or different versions of the Joker over the years. So we get the Killing Joke Joker and so on and so forth, right? And hey, those are all cool. Those were all pretty much open order variants. But where I really shouldn't have spent the money were these variants, these ratio variants. These black and whites are the 1 in 100 variants for each issue of the series. And then this one was a 1 in 25 variant for the second printing of the book. I've never heard of a second printing having a ratio variant, but that's what this is. And of course, I committed when the 3 Jokers began. I wanted every cover, I had to have all of it, had to buy it all. And, you know, that's what happens when you give, you know, somebody like me a stimulus check. I stimulated the economy with that check. Best believe me. So anyway, I know I paid $100 for this one. I'm pretty sure I paid $100 for this one as well. It looks like I only paid $80 for this one based on this price tag. But this one was $45 that I did not need to spend. And it's not so much that I didn't enjoy 3 Jokers. It was a little underwhelming by the end. I enjoyed collecting it. I enjoyed a lot about 3 Jokers. But when I look back at the money I spent on this, I'm like, yo, that was like a month's worth of comics. That's 2 months worth of comics on my current budget. And so, I don't know. Do I regret them? Kind of. But this was my first major Batman event. And so I have fond memories, even as I look back, like shaking my head, like, why did I buy these? And so that's it. All right. So that's pretty much it. That's the biggest regrets list. Now, there are other books that I bought. Like I was shopping every week on the Ultimate Comics live show. And I did do stuff like this, like buying things just because there's a cool character on it. Oh, it's Luke Cage. It's an old Luke Cage cover. I like it. Right. Or something like this. Alex Ross Timeless Variants. Nice cover, but I'm not reading this book. Or even stuff like this, right? This is a issue of Star Wars, and it's like, oh, the first appearance of the yellow lightsaber in a Star Wars comic. Does anybody care about that factoid? I don't. And I'm probably never going to sell this book anyway. So I definitely have made little mistakes like that along the way, just playing into the hype of somebody selling you a comic. But all in all, like I said, I love comics. I think comics are dope. That's why I named my channel that. And for the most part, there's not really much that I regret. Every comic is fun. Every comic is enjoyable in some way and has some value as art and entertainment. And so there's not a ton that I'm just like, oh, why did I buy that? But there are some decisions that I look back on and I'm like, hey, man, you should have done better. So, hey, don't be like me. I used to say this all the time, and I think that's actually a pretty fitting way to go out. So huge thanks to the channel family. And yeah, you know, you can avoid having a big regrets list like this if you buy what you like Make sure you read what you buy and be nice to others, because kindness makes the world go round. Peace.